Welcome to Insights. I'm Eric. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to talk about palladium again. And palladium had been a market that had been up for almost 3 years. The BUT, which is the bullish count, was well above 24. I can't remember the exact number. I'd have to go look it up. But it had been there a long time. It had produced a returns high of 200%. Now we are toiling with a primary downside flip. We have a 1, it's highlighted here, which means that's a flip in progress. It's a flip that won't be finalized until the end of the month, so it won't be finalized until the 1st of October, and we have to see if the primary trend can hold up. We also have a secondary trend, or the weekly trend is down. It's been down for 4 weeks. There's been quite a sizable rally or decline. Its price cycle is point 0.1, which is above its mean, and that's been accomplished within 4 weeks, so that's pretty quick. We can see the size of the decline here. The tertiary trend has been down, or the daily trend has been down for 41 days. It's produced a price cycle of 3 standard deviation and a time cycle of slightly above 3 standard deviations, so this is an extended move. The way I would look at this is palladium really does need a recovery here, at least a shorter term, but be careful that that recovery could be driven by energy, and this is an unusual setup itself. We have a fairly well trend to the downside, fairly organized. It's pushing all 3 time frames down, but there's really no force to it. WAA is at 0.2. Now, palladium's not a deep, heavily traded contract, but this is WAA should be closer to 100 in a forceful decline, and it's actually contracting near 0, so there's no one participating in this decline. That's a bit unusual. That doesn't favor a continuation to a flip to the downside. But this energy build, which is quite high at 95, which maximum is 100, and a DI2 of 37, this is not something that qualifies as a nibble. Nibbles can only take place against a primary trend that's been, in this case, would have to be in the opposite direction. It would have to be down, which it is, but it would have to be down from an extended or extreme cycle position. The price cycle would have to be above 2 standard deviations, or the time cycle would have to be above 2 standard deviations, or pretty high. I mean, maybe above 1.5, and neither one of them are there. This is a trend that's flipping down, so this is not an old primary trend of which you can nibble against with a large energy build. There really isn't much to do with this setup, because this setup is what you're seeing here is these are the different time frames. This is the primary trend, secondary trend, tertiary trend. The primary trend is turning down. We're starting to see the composite trend. Everything is in agreement. It's coming down. The secondary trend's down. The daily or tertiary trend is down. So everything is lining up to the downside, but it is this energy build which is opposing it, and it's not big enough to trade all by itself. It is a big number, but the fact is you can't use energy all by itself in the evolution of the trade. Evolution of the trade is a trend following mechanism. It follows the primary trend. It moves in and out of positions based on the composite trend. And this primary trend is not very old, so this is not something that we want to nibble against. So what could this energy build be doing? It could be attempting to flip all 3 time frames, the daily, weekly, and monthly, but we'll have to wait for them to flip back up to triple alignment before we can purchase this or chase this. This will be a composite trend flip, reset, or it won't be a reset. It'll be a complete composite trend alignment. It'll be a primary trend flip back up from down to up, and that's going to take some time to do. It is quite possible that the energy build will be unsuccessful trying to flip this trend back up. The primary trend is starting to move down. It won't take much energy to keep it down, and once it gets to 2 and solidifies, we can easily see in the lead M tab under Palladium. Palladium goes back quite a bit of time here. We can see since about 1977 there's been 12 bearish counts, bearish impulses. Only 2 of them have failed. So less than 20% of these impulses have failed to the downside. That means 80% tend to go in the direction that the primary trend goes, at least for counts greater than 2. So this energy build needs to see the primary trend flip, then it needs to see all three time frames go back into alignment. I'll have to go triple up before you can chase it on the bull side. For now, this is just a bullish energy build as the invisible hand attempts to catch the primary trend, but it can fail. Well, I've seen that these energy builds, which will slow the whole process down, but if Palladium is really intent on establishing a new primary trend down impulse, this energy bill will be dissipated without much effect on on the upside or into a rally. And eventually this will dissipate out. And then when the energy bill turns neutral or negative, or even becomes statistically bearish, a bearish energy bill, all three time frames will align and you will get much quicker acceleration to the downside. So we're going to have to keep an eye on this. This is kind of how Palladium's setting up currently, but this setup is really common across the board in almost all markets. Every market I've seen here in the matrix follows this stuff that tracks energy. Energy is an important tool that creates ebb and flow within the primary trend. But remember, don't play with it all by itself. Don't use energy in isolation relative to the composite trend or even the primary trend. Don't trade against the primary trend unless the primary trend is old in cycles. And since the primary trend for Palladium is down and it's not very old, you can't nibble despite the large bullish energy build, because it violates the constraint that we would only buy primary trends that have statistical extension either in the price or time cycles. This is not something that you just make up off the seat of your pants. These rules are there for a reason. I've observed setups and energy movements and cycles for a long time inside the matrix. And I know that bullish energy builds only are effective, or bearish energy builds are only effective if the primary trend is extended or old. Otherwise, you take up a position against something that's too new and the primary trend just plows through the energy build. What will happen is the invisible hand will slow that initial decline or decline. And in the case of Palladium, it'll slow the decline down. But once the energy build releases itself, this thing will align, triple line down, and it'll accelerate quite quickly once the energy build goes in line or more in sympathy with the primary trend. So that's something to keep in mind for Palladium in all markets that you track inside the matrix. If you have any questions, let me know. Contact me back at the blog. I'll leave some comments under the video. I'll leave this one open up for everyone to watch, since it can be applied for everything else that's out there, and it's a good teaching tool of how we use the matrix. If you have any specific points, subscribe to the channel too, or leave them under the video, and we can talk about them then. If not, get back to us through the blog or through the website, and we'll answer any of your questions as best as we can. Thanks for watching the video, and keep an eye on Palladium in terms of a good learning experience for other markets inside the matrix.